restart that movement maybe after this COVID subsides?
COVID will accelerate that process. Now, I
Actually,
think the awareness has come for adults.
because
Sir,
those
excuse me.
vaccinations are
Yeah.
aimed at building immunity also.
Correct.
Sir, excuse me.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we start the meeting?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Good morning, all. On behalf of SIGAM, it is my privilege to welcome you all for this webinar series, Expanding the Landscape of New Normal. As we all know, during the last 15 to 18 months, we hospital administrators are facing different kind of challenges. So we felt this is the right time for us to learn from the experts to develop new strategies for our respective organizations, especially to evolve new business models to match with the growing needs in the industry. Hearty welcome to Dr. Giridhar Gyani, Director General HPA New Delhi, and Dr. Ujjwal Rao, Rector Healthcare Pune. Thank you for accepting our invitation to address this webinar. Special welcome to Mr. Ananda Padmanabhan, Director, Tenex Healthcare, Coimbatore, Mr. Neelakannan, CEO, Apollo Adlex Hospital, Kochi, Dr. Krishnananda, Chief Operating Officer, Royal Care Hospital, Coimbatore, and Dr. Subhasurya, Royal Head Nursing Services, Manipal Hospitals, Manipal. Thank you for accepting our invitation and sharing your expert views. Let me thank all SIGAM members and our fraternity for your overwhelming response to participate in this webinar. We have more than 250 registrations as of now, with participation from across the country as well as from other countries also. Pleased to welcome all the delegates. Let me thank our ARMC IVF Fertility Center's Managing Director, Dr. K.U. Kunjumaideen, for guiding me and supporting me to organize this webinar. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. Special mention to Medcon team for their support in organizing this event. Hearty welcome to Professor Ashok Tyagarajan, who has wholeheartedly supported me in organizing this event. Participants we are planning to organize series of webinars. Participants can share your inputs on interesting topics. We will try to include the topics in the forthcoming events. Let me invite Professor Ashok Tyagarajan to share the theme of the event and introduction of the faculty. I am sure you will enjoy your Sunday with this webinar. Let me thank all of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you all. Over to Professor Ashok.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krishna Kumar, and it's a great pleasure and honor to meet all the eminent personalities in this webinar. And this is a very important webinar because we put it as a new normal because we need to live with that. And as an operation person who is leading a group of hospitals, every day I am facing new challenges. In spite of my 39 years experience in healthcare industry, every day I'm finding it very difficult to manage a situation, and every minute is posing challenge because we have to deal with the lives of the people. So this is a very, very crucial time, and it is a very, very interesting topic and important topic. And for the past 1 year, as a faculty in IIM and various institutions, we are all acclimatized for such e-learning programs and also for e-meetings. All the 3 hours lectures, 2 hours lecture, we are able to manage with this e-platform. And I think it's going to be the future. The e-platform, e-learning, and digital is going to be the future. And with this, as I always strongly believe that the system process integration, we are going to talk about that only, and how we are going to improve the process by way of artificial intelligence, by way of improving the various quality measures. We are going to hear from the experts. And there are some interesting topics. As I said, today, if you see, open anything about healthcare, there are 3-4 things are being talked about it. Number 1 is machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and the big data management. So these are all the things which are being discussed at length, any forum. As an administrator, I see that these are all big names. Yes, I could see that. But how far I am going to implement it? In spite of our beloved, the great Dr. Gyani has been warning us, gentlemen, please wait for the second wave, third wave, what is going to happen? Continuously, we could see that. But whether the fraternities and the administrators, have we prepared ourselves? we listened, but we were either not knowing or we were not prepared for that. And Dr. Gyani was continuously cautioning the healthcare industry, what is going to happen. His predictions have come true. So in this scenario, I don't want to take much time in talking about that, because we have got experts, and I got a great pride. It's a great pleasure. It's a great joy to introduce our beloved quality guru, the quality god of Indian healthcare, Dr. Giridhar Gyani. And Dr. Giridhar Gyani, I would request each one of you, please go through the Google and see his profile. His stature is really big, and the contributions, what he has done to the Indian, not only Indian, Asian quality movement is phenomenal. I think the word quality is evolved from his mouth and from his action. I still remember with my guru, Mr. UK Ananda Padmanabhan, way back in 2010 and 11, when we were talking about the quality, the first name came was Dr. Giridhar Gyani. All the way he traveled from Delhi, came to a small town like in those days, Coimbatore, and he was insisting upon it. And Mr. Ananda Padmanabhan used to say that 2010 we started, we got in ABA somewhere in 2014, 15, even though we started the movement way back in 2010. Dr. Gyani is a living legend, and he has been an advisor, and the word NABH or the quality, some standards, every hospital, I'm very happy to see that, because now I am covering tier 3 or tier 4 city. I'm handling a hospital in a small town, which is 50 kilometers away from Trichy. People are talking about quality, small, the parameters, indicators. Very, very happy to see that it is being implemented, all because of great man, Dr. Giridhar Gyani. Sir, we are indebted to you, sir. The complete generation of Indian healthcare industry is indebted to you for your contribution, your hard work, the miles, the millions of miles Dr. Gyani has traveled, Vietnam, Philippines, Pakistan, everywhere. And he has talked about the quality, and he has ignited the minds of the people, the importance of quality. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure for all the youngsters, all the administrators to hear from Dr. Gyani. Dr. Ujwal Rao, my interactions were very limited, but very interesting profile. What I could see is that the Dr. Ujwal Rao, he has graduated in medicine. He has been in quality all along. He has been an assessor for quality. Then there are certain subjects which are very close to my heart, bioinformatics, and also the gene mapping, and also the molecular cellular structures. These are all he is associated with that. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us to learn from such a great doctor and also a researcher. And it's a great pleasure. And thank you very much, sir. And with this, we are all very happy to hear and learn from that. Last but not the least, Dr. Kunjumaideen is a torchbearer for these meetings. I still remember in a place like Calicut, fantastic meeting was organized by him. And I would like to tell you, yes, burned his midnight oil from 9 to 12 just to design, to send the literature, to design everything he has done. Apart from a doctor, the passion for his, the mindset, what he has got to educate the people, to organize such meeting. For a doctor, why should you sit night till 1 o'clock, 1:30, design some literature, see the web page, and also send mails? Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kunjumaideen, for your commitment and for your interest to ignite the minds of the people. Thank you very much. Over to Dr. Gyani.
Yeah. So let me share my screen. Yeah, okay. Okay, fine. So I think very good morning to all of you once again. And as I can see, I think, all of us are known to each other for a number of years. So we are going to share our own experience in this kind of program. There's nothing like, searching from some Google or searching from certain books, Basically, we are here today to share the experience, learn from each other, and how can we make the outcomes of healthcare better than what we have been able to do it. And I think the COVID has been the great, I'll say, educator to all of us. In fact, we must thank COVID for many, many things. It has really made us to realize where we stand. Where are the shortcomings in the political leadership? in the bureaucratic leadership and in the medical leadership. And the medical leadership, I start from the minister, secretary, and down the line, health, hospital administrator, and individual doctor and nurse. All of us are part of that. So today's topic, of course, which I'll share my things for 15-20 minutes. And then we will be open to our own discussion, because as I said, this is our own family. We are talking to each other. So there's nothing to be very formal. We will be informal to share our own experience. So I always generally start with, whenever you are talking any subject connected with the healthcare, you must know where do we stand. Because people sitting in Chennai, people sitting in Delhi, people sitting in Bangalore have one idea about the healthcare. When you go 100 kilometers away from these big cities, you actually come to know where we are and where we are as a nation. And unfortunately, we have still not learned. More than 70 years have gone. But past 3-4 years, I think there has been some awakening, I will say. And COVID wave 1 brought us some awakening. But still, I am very sorry actually that even after COVID-1, I was looking for some drastic things happening, which did not happen. And COVID-2 came in the meantime. So I'm sure, this is good enough, for every one of us to realize what we need to do. So the first thing first is, every time we keep talking of, shortage of beds. In fact, I have done a number of studies on Delhi to begin with, and I found that Delhi has got the highest bed capacity per 1,000 population, highest in the country, let me tell you. Because Delhi has got central establishment like Safdarjung, AIIMS, and so many others, then Delhi government, then of course private sector in a big way. But every time we run short, because of the simple reason that the adjoining area of UP, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, Uttarakhand, all people, they rush to Delhi whenever there is a problem. Because Delhi has, become a place, you can call it notorious in that sense, that anything happens, go to Delhi. Same thing is about Chennai, same thing is about Bangalore. Now, why it has happened, that is a separate point. Maybe if time permits, I will cover that. So the issue here is that this survey, which happened 1.5 years back, 145 is the rank out of 195 on the health effectiveness. The simple reason, the poorest marks where we got in that study was on the poor accessibility. Because as I said, Delhi by itself, Chennai by itself, Hyderabad by itself have got enough number of beds, nothing to worry. But when you go to nearest tier 3 town, you find no tertiary care hospital at all. The quote of Telangana I have shared in the last program also 1.5 years back, that things are a little bit changed now. Out of 125 hospitals with the 100 bed and above, 118 are in Hyderabad alone. So you can imagine how uneven distribution is there of tertiary care hospitals in a state like Telangana. And same is the story across, more or less, In Tamil Nadu, I can say that only the 50% hospital of 100 and above are in Coimbatore and in the Chennai. That's all. That is a big size distribution, I can tell you. So that is where we have fared very, very poorly. Accessibility is very poor. Doctors, of course, population is fine, If you add Ayush doctor into this, which of course, if I say, then we'll be creating a fight between Ramdev and IMA, that, Ayush doctor could have been utilized for Ayush, I'm saying. The problem is in this country is that Ayush doctor, we want to utilize into allopathic. We want to convert them by 6-month training. Why? We have enough, things that Ayush doctor can perform as a Ayush doctor and take some of the burden of the disease burden. Then we will be crossing, we will be actually having the 1.2 doctors per 1,000 population, surpassing the WHO, but we have not done it. And other thing is, of course, this population 0.65 actually is misleading, because we are counting all MBBS doctors. And today we know MBBS doctors are actually not doctors in that sense. because we are not able to utilize them anywhere. So the issue is that we are very poor in terms of doctor to population ratio. Nurse also is the same thing. And worst is that allied healthcare workforce. I'm surprised that only 3 months back we passed the resolution. Allied Healthcare Council now has come into play after 71 years. Can you believe it, that this country has been surviving with totally unstructured allied healthcare, while the technician, emergency technician, critical care technician, you name, I mean, they are so important people, but we have treated them very, very unfairly, and we have been qualifying them the way we want. So Professor Ashok will have one academy, he will qualify, I will have another academy, I will qualify in another way. Everybody is qualifying these allied healthcare workforce, and that has resulted into very, poor outcome overall. Anyway, I think the final thing is that we have no really regulation. The state government, they behave like a regulator. They are not regulator actually, they are government. But as and when the opportunity comes, they can walk into any hospital, tell you that your biomedical waste is poor and we are closing your hospital for 2 months. That has happened in a number of places. Anyway, so that is the situation. I thought you must know where we are and how we are rated globally. Now, these are the few challenges which are all known to you. You see, every time we keep saying, if you attend the program in past 5-6 years, the first sentence, the keynote speaker will tell you, healthcare is at the crossroad. And this we have been hearing for 6 years. And we are not able to cross that crossroad. We still remain at the crossroad. And none of us is clear what is going to be in the first COVID era, there was a strong rumor which people thought is going to happen. Nationalize all healthcare. It went to Supreme Court. It was heard for 3 hearings. Somehow anyway, Supreme Court also knew that this is not the solution. In fact, I that time wrote an article which came in the papers. I said, instead, what you can do is you can privatize entire healthcare. Do reverse. All government hospitals, you privatize, and then you appoint a strong regulatory body, national regulatory body like TRAI, like IRDA, a strong healthcare regulatory body. And I tell you, you will see the fantastic results. When we are able to privatize banks, airlines, even railways, we are now part of the railways is being privatized. What stops us to privatize entire healthcare and put the regulatory body on the top? I think we will function better than what is happening today. Reforms. My worry is in this country, medical education and industries are always together separate. In the state level, you will find one minister looking after the medical education and one minister looking after the health and family welfare. The education minister has no worry about what for he is producing doctor, nurses, or any other thing. He says, I am running my own shop in my own way. And that is why Medical Council of India was called as a shop. So we never realize that what kind of doctors we need in this country, how quickly we need them. No, we are not bothered. Today, 18,000 or 20,000 it might have become, but I'm sure it is still 18,000 radiologists in this entire country. 18,000. And we accept every pregnant lady to have 4 ultrasound. It is a joke, 18,000 people, and they don't allow anybody else to do ultrasound. So this is where the healthcare reforms still, I think, have not taken off. Public funding, all of us keep talking. Nothing is going to improve. Government doesn't have money. They are talking of 2.5% GDP in time to come by 23. I don't know whether they will reach that target, but even 2.5 is minuscule. So only grace point is the private sector. If you really encourage private sector, incentivize private sector, they are capable of putting, in fact, from 3.5, which is presently 3.7 perhaps, they can bring it to 5% of the GDP. That is the kind of power private sector has. If you name any big player of country in India, I don't want to name them, all bigs, Are they investing in healthcare? No, sorry. None of them have invested in the healthcare. And all big chains of the healthcare today have been sold in past 4 years. Sold to whom? Nobody from India has bought. Who has bought? Money has come from overseas, and overseas bodies actually are running your healthcare system. So that is where we are, because nobody finds healthcare as an attractive investment. Healthcare is rising cost. Now, the question is, who is saying rising cost? Has somebody worked out what is the right model of running healthcare and what will be the operating cost? Has anybody done this study? I am sorry to say, except few study here and there, some by IMA, some by here, some by HTI, some by FICCI, all actually, but they cannot be called authentic, because government tells me whenever I have a meeting with them, they say, no, this is not authentic. We are not part of it. Then why don't you become part of it? So there was a Department of Health Research constituted only for this purpose. They started the exercise 1 year back, sorry, 1.5 year back now, and they gave up. So this is where we are. Human resource shortage, I think we have already discussed about it. And here I would like to quote Devi Shetty. You know, he used to tell us 3 years back when we had a meeting in the erstwhile Niti Aayog. He says, we can supply allied healthcare to the world. And I think there's nothing wrong. Had we our own council, had we signed MOU, mutual understanding with other countries, the way we do it in quality or other actor, I think we have such a large youth. We would have supplied this workforce to the entire world and generated a hell of a lot of foreign exchange. We have missed the bus, but even then, even now it is not too late, provided we wake up. So this is where I think the human resource we are. Training and education remains a challenge. I think unlike automobile industry, unlike telecommunication, unlike IT, they have fixed 10 man-days training is a must for executive. 5 man-days in a year is must for supervisor, so and so. There's nothing like in healthcare. I don't think hospitals send any nurse for the training outside. Whatever little bit training is done, this is done in-house. So this is, we have got zero respect for the training and education. Soft skill, this is not part of our curriculum. We don't train even doctors on the communication. So the patient interface also is left to, who are sitting in the front desk office. So this is a weak area, but unfortunately, we have not even realized that this should be our strong area. People are not prepared to go to tier 3 towns. Simple reason, because the shortage. If there is a shortage, why will they go to tier 3? So, and of course, finally, I think this is going to be the game of the play tomorrow, that patient consumerism. The healthcare is going to be seen like the way you buy from Amazon or any other online platform. The healthcare, sooner or later, some component will become like that. Actually, I have said number of times that future tertiary care hospital will have 75% ICU beds. That's all. Hospital means ICU bed. Otherwise, you need not go to the hospital. There should be other means of getting the treatment done. So this is what is going to happen and should happen, I will say. So now coming to today's topic, these are the simple roles which, we all are taught. Whenever we do an MBA in hospital administration, and whenever Dr. Ashok teaches hospital administration, he covers these 5 points. So these 5 points are very simple. What is the role of administrator? You see, Padmanabhan, I have seen, in his earlier tenure at Coimbatore, how effective, I had seen him functioning, because he used to lead not business professional, but the clinical professional. Very few administrators today can say that my role is to lead clinical and business professional to improve the healthcare facilities. I think there is a demarcation now. There is one medical director, he is looking after so-and-so, then one hospital administrator, and then overall one CEO. So I'm talking of that CEO who can be naturally he will be only a CEO. his role is to lead these clinical people. And of course, the business standpoint of view, the turnover should keep on increasing, that is okay. That is the main part of it. Then human resource responsibility, hiring, staffing, training, and performance reviews. The performance review, I can again tell people sitting here and that this is a weak area. I don't think we do the performance review the way we do it in automobile, the way we do it in information technology. This is very poor. I don't know why we are not able to design how a performance review should be done for nurse, for a junior clinician, for a senior clinician when he is HOD. I think this is a very weak area, and HR people used to avoid joining healthcare. Now, of course, they have started joining, but I think they have not brought that practices from the other industry into the healthcare. And that is where I think we are suffering. Marketing tactics, of course, will remain, that if you are in a business, you will have to have strong marketing. In fact, my administrator friends, they keep telling me that if you give me a strong team of consultants and a strong team of marketing, I will run the hospital. They say we don't need anything else. Known branded consultant and the marketing team. So anyway, that is the way actually we are running it. And final point is keeping close connect with patients and community at large. So if you see, points are very simple, 5. I don't think I have spent much time on this because otherwise we can spend half an hour on these 5 points only. But they sum up what an administrator is supposed to be. Many of the administrators have reduced their standing overall by confining them to very small, area of the activities, and automatically when you reduce your scope of activity, others take over. Others means who have no business to actually take over. But because your stature, you are bringing your stature down, down, and down because of lack of performance or lack of your initiative, others get opportunity to pitch in. But ideally, this is the complete role of the administrator. So now coming to the topic of the day, during COVID, how things have changed. What, administrator is supposed to be doing differently. So here I will say, even non-COVID time, when you are maybe sitting cushy job, sitting in the glass room, but in COVID time, you cannot afford to do that. And I can tell you, this has not happened in COVID too. I have seen failure. I am repeating, failure of political leadership, bureaucratic leadership, and healthcare leadership. Because point number here is when actually the system became overwhelmed, we tend to give up. Oh, nothing can be done. Okay, so let us. That's all. Once the administrator gets this feeling, the message goes down the line. And that can totally damage how we have managed the healthcare today. I'm very sorry to say that I don't want to say out of 100 how many hospitals must have failed in this direction. But quite a few of them, and some of them reputed my own personal experience during COVID too, the way I have been reacting, the way I have been interacting, I tell you, I find very poor performance from the administrators. They could not create empowered team because they could not behave as a leader, that I am in the command, don't worry. Chips are down, no problem, don't worry. But we will still do it. I think that kind of conversation was lacking most of the time. In fact, infection prevention control, I think by and large, we learned from the COVID phase 1. I think more or less we have continued. But my point is, if the infection prevention control practices were solid on ground, there should not have been any fear among us. We still had a lot of fear. I'm not saying that there should not be fear. Fear is to be there. But in COVID-1, I found that most of the healthcare professionals were concerned, how do we save ourselves? While our concern should have been how we save patient. So again, please understand, I'm not saying that we are not supposed to save ourselves. Unless if we do not save ourselves, how can we save patient? So that goes without saying. But we should have confidence in our infection prevention and control practices, that we have put so much infection control practices, we have good PPE, we have good masks, over and above. Now, of course, vaccination has been done in wave 2. So we are reasonably confident, nothing to worry. Now that confidence is a job of the administrator. How do you instill that confidence? Strengthening the facility response mechanism, because at times we found that people were lined up in the emergency department. There is no bed inside, but 20 people are in the line in the emergency and another 20 on the roadside waiting in the car. This was the regular scenario in Delhi, at least I can tell you. Now, that time, what innovative practices some people, devised, they, in the veranda, they put the oxygen connection, okay, for the time being, who the patient is really struggling, they put him on the oxygen without any medical attention. At least something they were able to do it, because that was possible when there was a passionate administrator, because he knew that if I do not take care of them, they will die on the way to second hospital. So this is the facility response mechanism, talking to government, talking to other authorities. This is a small issue, but important issue, that financial implication came, cost on PPEs, cost on oxygen. You will be surprised to see that Ananta is going to talk that oxygen became 3 times consumption in the ward and 5 times in the ICU. And on top of it, oxygen was available in the black market in Delhi. So they were paying 2 to 3 times. So you can see the overall cost, how much it went away. Cancelled surgeries, of course, a small part. Manpower, we were paying 30 to 40% extra money to keep them, in good shape, in motivation shape. So that is the way, Communication, as I told you, for example, if the patient is in the ICU ward, obviously his relations are not allowed to enter. You should have simple practice that if you are in ICU, you will give the call to his family 2 times, morning, evening. That's all. Why can't you make a simple protocol? People are ringing me, sir, my patient is in so and so. Please get me update. Now, what is this? It is happening. Why can't we do a simple chap in the front desk, keep him there, give the status report from ICU, which comes in any case, and this person just tells them, okay, your patient is in that condition. These are the parameters, so and so. Nothing, we could not do that. Communication with the health ministry, communication with the ICMR and so. Big failure this time. COVID-2, big failure. I will tell again in the next slide the same thing. Second, we have missed the opportunity. We are so bad, actually. We have not been able to capture the data. This would have been the gold mine for us. Because patient came with different condition and different symptom, and then what was the outcome? You could have immediately evolved a performa. In fact, yesterday I found the first time I have attended this, mucormycosis 3 program I attended. Only yesterday I found 2 good doctors telling me that this is the 110 patient we have seen. This is the outcome, this was the condition, this was the parameter, and they were able to tell me first time that what could be the probable cause. Because my question to them was, why mucormycosis is happening only in India? COVID-2 is there in all countries, but you hardly hear any case of mucormycosis in another country. So it should be easy to find out where we have gone wrong. And luckily I got answer yesterday. So we are excellent consultant we have, but no data, and this job is not of consultant. Now I can tell you, this must be done by the administrator. He must be quick to evolve a maybe makeshift performa and collect the data. This will be gold mine for all the future cases. Using telehealth strategy, even today, I think again, Ananta, I am sure we'll talk about it. So, we have not been able to exploit and, make our consultant comfortable with the telehealth, Following global and national healthcare guideline, I am really aghast to say, remdesivir, about 2.5 months precisely back, WHO said that this is not a wonder drug. This will not save life. At best, it will save 2 days of the hospitalization. In spite of that, our chains, I cannot tell you the names, all these big hospitals, they will give prescription, remdesivir. And telling them it is not available in my pharmacy, please bring from outside. I'm really surprised to know if your pharmacy is not able to procure remdesivir, you are branded hospital, how that poor patient will run around. And I tell you the kind of calls I used to get, because they used to feel that if they get remdesivir, they will save their mother, they will save their father. All, I don't want to use any word here. They paid 50,000, 60,000 rupees. Drug which was not going to do anything. I think I'm very, actually it is paining me when I'm talking to you on this point. All this kind of drugs which were declared not good for by WHO, our top leadership in medical could not convey to the doctors down the line. This is one point. This is again, I'm saying all is the role of the administrator. Please understand, because doctors will not be able to, this is your role, and that's why I'm saying comprehensive list of the, anyway, this is diagram. Okay, I will skip. For example, I saw, for example, this is a 200-bedded hospital. This is the kind of people we have got. The administration which we are talking generally has got second largest number of the people working with the directly under the administration, that is 130 out of 650, which includes all marketing and everything of that. So why I'm showing you this diagram, because during COVID, the 45 full-time consultants were not available in real sense. People do not talk it open, but I'm telling you, in normal hospital functioning, these 45 take the brunt of the whole medical running. But in COVID, idea is, oh no, I am a neurosurgeon, I'm a cardiovascular surgeon, I am so and so, I am so and so. I mean, maybe I don't want to really here say whether they were right or wrong, but they were not available. Junior resident 30, and this is where nurses came into picture. The junior resident and nurses only were able to manage the clinical part. And number of beds from 200, government allowed, at least in Delhi, you can make 260. Beds increase, doctor strength went down, nursing staff 30% also actually vanished in the COVID phase 1. I do not know because they have returned back in COVID 2 or not. So if you ask me, one nurse instead of looking after 6 beds was looking after 12, sometimes 20, sometimes 25. Can you imagine? And if you that time do not have the set protocols, you can understand what will be our medical management. So this is which I am talking here. That is where here the administration becomes the pivot in overall management of pandemic, with the multifarious activity dealing with multidisciplinary organization, regulator, government, NCDC, DMA, ICMR, media, community, legal. You can imagine how much is the load increase on the hospital administrator. My only message to all of you is, you have to take this, this is my load, don't run away. If you run away, then hospital will crumble. Here at this point of time, consultants are not with you. They are separately sitting because they have other job. Few non-COVID patients and they are specialists, so you leave them aside. They are not available to you. So this is where actually my worry comes. And now let me, because already I think I've taken more time. So, the takeaway from COVID-2 now, whatever at least I have learned is, one is, again and again, we want to remind the policy makers that you do not have even the minimum basic healthcare structure in the country. Forget about COVID, treating, for example, taking care of the pandemic. Forget. Even normal healthcare you do not have. How will you take care of the pandemic? So that is the first thing. Huge shortage of staff, compounded by the attrition. This time we saw large number of attrition. This has not come in the newspaper, by the way, because other countries were short and they were paying 5 times of the salary and recognizing them. Nurses, I think large number of nurses have gone from north, at least I know, even south must have gone, I'm sure. So this is what happened. When systems become overwhelmed, helplessness is creeped in. This is dangerous situation. I already explained to you. Because then you try to console yourself. You try to justify within yourself. Arey bhai, kya kare? Nothing can happen. So leave it, leave it. You know, this very dangerous situation. You know that helplessness when you comes in. No. Even when you are losing the battle, an army commander will not run away. He'll say, okay, I am surrounded, but let me face it like this. So that is the administrator role here, I'm saying. Poor communication, I have told you, all around, very, very poor communication. Low morale of the staff is very natural, and that is where the leader, administrator has to stand like a larger than life leader. Can you do that? You know, this is very important. Ambiguity of disease management. Now, 5 days back, that is exactly 1 week back, AIMS director telling us, I'm not criticizing him, he has done a wonderful job, that, you know, it was the steroids which is causing the mucormycosis, black fungus. Now you see what is to be done. Already damage has been done. If we are telling now all the patients who are in the bed today, my mucormycosis, have taken steroids, not 6 mg, not 12 mg, 18 mg. And they were available off the shelf from the chemist shop. One doctor wrote steroids, rest of his friends, family, colony, everybody say, "Ore, what are you taking? I am taking this." They do not know the word steroids. That's okay, same prescription, they send to chemist and chemist supplies online to them. I tell you, we have done huge damage. I talked to my friends in USA and England last week on steroids. They say, we just cannot give steroids. It is so, I mean, there are strong protocols. We cannot just, they told me, how come you have been giving steroids from day one? If you give steroids 6 mg from 6th day, up to some extent, I can say acceptable, but you can pick up the antibiotics. No role of antibiotics in COVID, but I can tell you, you pick up 100 prescription, out of them 95 will show you from day one, azithromycin, doxycycline together. I mean, what have we done? I think that's why I'm saying I'm very sorry that ICMR, Ministry of Health, they have failed miserably. And that is where rampant irrational prescription of drugs. My chemist, you know, who supplies to me, he tells me, sir, this time in 2 months, we have, our turnover is what we have do it in 1 year. I think you can talk to your chemist shop or your pharmacy. They will tell you precisely this one. So anyway, I think so this is the learning from it. So the post-COVID, I think these are the few things. This is of course not the scope of the talk, but just you can just run through that home health will become one of the hospital vertical. I mean, you can increase your number of beds from 100 to 200 by creating 100 beds in the home care, but create your own home care. Don't depend on anybody. You create your own vertical, you know, this is one. The leadership, I can tell you, you all had very cushy job because you are in the, you know, suppliers market. Healthcare is shortage. So running a hospital, I say, has been very easy in this country. Because people come to you begging, sir, I need a bed. But that is not going to be the time. You will require, leadership will be now tested. Best HR practices will be required to, you know, come. And facility management will not be the same what you have been doing till now. And finally, I think this is at the national level. We are telling government, I'm showing the same thing, that create 100-bed hospital through the private sector, incentivize them. Otherwise, nobody will put the hospital in tier 3 towns. Pay structure will alter, I can assure you. Multi-stacking and job rotation also will come into play. That preventive healthcare, that is, you know, the wellness will become a business by itself. Immunity building and wellness, if the hospital can have again a vertical like that, it will be a new business opportunity. Bundle payment is going to come. You just mark my days, mark my words, it is going to happen. In short, from patient-centric, a time to become patient-driven. So I think I don't know whether I have taken a little more time, but this is what somewhere my anguish was there, somewhere my experience was speaking, so sorry otherwise, So, but I thought, let me speak what I feel. So over to Ashok.
Thank you, Dr. Gyani, and fantastic. It is mesmerizing talk, and I could experience or I could see what has happened in this whole month, 1 month. As you rightly pointed out, I am right now in a place called Pudukottai, which is a tier 3 or tier 4 city. Whatever you said has happened here also. All consultants gone, only the people or the junior guy or ER physician is taking care everywhere. Even in Chennai, in Mumbai, it's same, no oxygen and nothing. And you put it in a nutshell, it's absolutely right. Maybe I got one fear, sir, because I have been telling since I'm also as a faculty. I used to tell them that how long these administrators are going to tell crow is white, crow is white, crow is white. The crow is black. You have to tell. You may lose your job. That is different. That's absolutely different. But we need to, as you rightly pointed out, we need to have the guts to tell this. You are right. People many times they felt there is an opportunity to make money. Yes, that is there. But at what cost? And when we talk about quality, when we talk about people, I think as you rightly pointed out, sir, when we don't have that patient centricity approach or patient care mind, it's not a business. It's of course a business, but it has got strong ethics. Because the main thing is to alleviate the sufferings of the people who are really suffering. This is really good. Sir, many questions are coming. I would like to ask one question to you, sir. One thing is that, Doctor, you have been telling that, you have been warning us that one question we'll see it in the end, we'll ask in the end.
We will ask in the end, that will be better, I believe.
Good. Okay. You can introduce Dr. Rao and we can start the next session.
Yes.